Hello students, let us see the second part of the chapter sorting materials into groups. The next property of materials that we are about to discuss is already familiar to you. Yes, it is solubility. This property is based on the ability of materials to dissolve or mix with water. According to this property, we can classify materials as soluble or insoluble solids and miscible or immiscible liquids. Even gases, when they are able to mix with water, you say them to be soluble in water. And the one which cannot mix is said to be insoluble in water. And some examples of soluble gases are carbon dioxide and oxygen, which is very much essential for the aquatic plants and animals for living under water. For the first activity, we will take 4 glasses of water, and the 4 substances we have taken are chalk powder, sugar, salt and sand. We will add one by one to the glasses and we have to stir the contents and check whether they are dissolving in water. After a few minutes, we can see the changes. First, with chalk powder, you can see it is not dissolved and it has settled down at the bottom of the glass. And when we check with the sugar tumbler, you can see the particles are not visible and they have dissolved fully. Similarly with salt particles are also not seen and they have dissolved fully. And you can see for sand, it has settled down. The heavier particles like gravel, pebble and sand particles have settled down at the bottom, but the humus floats on the top. So here too the particles have not dissolved. So which are all the soluble substances? Sugar and salt are soluble, and chalk and soil particles are not soluble in water. We will do the second activity for checking the miscibility of a few liquids like lemon juice, vegetable oil, milk and kerosene. For that, we will take 4 glasses of water and add the liquids one by one to the cup of water. And when we observe after a few minutes, we can see lemon juice and milk has mixed with water thoroughly, and it is not seen separately as water and milk or water and lemon juice. But in the case of vegetable oil and kerosene, we can see the separate layer of oil and here the kerosene in a different color, and it floats on top of water. So like humus, when we were checking with solubility, we can see oil floats on top of water. These two are called immiscible liquids, and the other two, milk and lemon juice, are miscible liquids. The next activity is about flotation of materials. When we add some materials to water, you can see a few will float on top of them and the rest will sink in water. We will just check the flotation of a few substances which we have taken here. A pebble or stone, I am going to drop it in water. In the next one, a plastic ball, a dry leaf, a metal screw, a metal coin, a piece of wood, a piece of straw, an eraser, a metal key, a feather, a piece of paper. So when you check, we can see which are all the substances which have sunk in water. The metal objects like the key, screw and coin, and the pebble and eraser, they have sunk in water. And what are the substances which are floating on water? The dry leaf, paper, feather, wood, plastic ball and the straw. The reason behind this is these objects are lighter than water. They are less dense than water, so they float. And the others which are heavier than water, they sink in water. You can recall the same thing when we were doing the first two activities regarding solubility. Sand was insoluble and the pebbles, gravel, it settled down, while the humus, which was less dense, was floating on top of water. The same way, when we were checking for miscibility, the immiscible liquids which were lighter like vegetable oil and kerosene were floating on top of water. So the density of the material decides whether the materials will float or sink in water. From the third activity, we can understand the following points. When the objects are less dense than water, they float on top of water, whereas the objects that are denser or heavier than water will sink in water. When you look at the examples, you notice some interesting facts. Ice is the solid form of water and it floats on liquid water because it is less dense than water. A plastic comb sinks in water as the shape of it makes it denser than water. This is in contrary with the plastic ball floating in the activity we did. The ball floats as it is filled with air inside, which makes it less dense or lighter than water. So we can conclude that the shape of an object also influences the density of the object and hence decides the flotation property. Iron is denser than water, so it has to sink in water. But how does a ship made out of iron float in the sea water? Think about it and find the reason. The last property about which we are going to discuss is transparency. Let us do an activity to understand about it. We'll do the next activity for checking the next property of the materials, that is transparency. For doing this activity, we need a torch, a hanging object, and 3 different materials, that is one made out of glass, the other one colored plastic, and the last one with metal. And you need a wall or any other blank object which will act as a screen. We will check how light passes through the different objects. When there is no object, you can see how much of light is falling on the wall. When I am going to pass this light through the glass tumbler, you can see almost the same way as there was no object in between. The light passes through it completely. When I am going to do that with the second object, that is plastic, you see only half the light is passing through, and the last one, the metal container, you can see it is nil. The amount of light passing through is nil, and you see a dark black shadow there. When you are going to see through the 3 different objects, you can see the object behind a transparent material is clearly seen. And when I am doing the same with the next type, that is colored plastic, you can see that is not so clear, but you can see that there is an object behind it. And when you are going to do the same with the metal container, you cannot see the object completely, it is blocked. So the materials like glass, through which the light completely passes through and you are able to see through it clearly, is called the transparent materials. And the next one, the colored plastic container, through which only partially the light passes through and you are not able to see clearly. That kind of object is said to be a translucent material. And the last one, through which completely the light is blocked and you are not even able to see what is behind that object, that is called an opaque material.